This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. Medal of Honor is a series that I love. It has been great covering it on my channel and exploring different aspects of the games. There's many entries, so it is interesting talking to all different types of fans for the games that really resonate with them. Some of the big and expected ones pop up from people like the very first Medal of Honor, Frontline, and Allied Assault. But I would say that there's a bunch of titles within this series that land more in the underrated side of things. Some that come to mind are like Rising Sun, the second Game Boy Advance game Infiltrator, Pacific Assault, and a few others. These are not bad. Honestly, in many cases, I think they are pretty great games. Probably the biggest issues against them was how this series was going on for a long time and getting a bit too oversaturated with how many titles were coming out, along with being eclipsed by other titles like say Frontline to Rising Sun or Allied Assault with Pacific Assault. But even so, going all the way back to the early days of Medal of Honor, I think the second entry is easily one of the most underrated and forgotten entries for the series. Medal of Honor Underground in many ways is exactly what I personally look for with a sequel on the same console. Can it capture the magic of the first while providing something new, whether that be perspective, mechanics, or something else? Even turning back to Underground for a bit when I was going through this entire series, Underground is such a gem, and it not only ranks as one of the best in the series, but also one of the best PS1 games too. When playing the original Medal of Honor, there are so many great elements that stand out. The shooting, the sound effects, environments, killer atmosphere, level design, and awesome mission briefings, and even more. This whole style is a winning formula. Underground essentially took all of that stuff that worked about the first, and provided it again with a new character, story, and refined it a bit further. Underground focused on following a French resistance fighter that joins up after her brother is killed. The player assumes the role of Manon Baptiste as she carries on her brother's mission. The end result is that she gets recruited into the OSS. This is the same group that you work for in the first as Jimmy Patterson. Another element I really love about these early Medal of Honor titles is how they have this spy element to them. You are one soldier completing these pivotal missions that contribute to the war effort. Other Medal of Honor games would focus just on the soldier and still be really good in their own right, but I prefer the ones where the game mixes soldier and spy. Exploring the game as a French resistance fighter gives the game a unique flavor, because this is something that I think should be explored more in entertainment, from films to shows and even more games. There's amazing stories to tell from World War II, and while I am a sucker for a good D-Day mission, as Medal of Honor not only did it great once but twice, seeing a side of the war that is not covered as much in entertainment definitely contributes to the uniqueness for Underground. Going back to my point about the spy aspect to the series, Underground puts you in situations where the player needs to work undercover to subvert and hurt the German efforts. There is a really fun instance where you need to assume the role of a photographer and need to damage them while in plain sight. I love this stuff, and it makes me long for EA or someone to make more games like this. Now of course, since like with the first game, authenticity was really important to the developers, the same level of detail and honestly quality was found with Underground as well. The shooting, gun sounds, enemy reactions, and more are all standouts, just like they were with the first. Now yes, I will admit that Underground is a sequel that isn't a type of 2.0 jump. This is more of a small jump providing improvements here and there, while also giving the player a brand new and equally as good campaign. I describe Underground as being more of the same in the best possible way. Some might say sequels need to have those big jumps. Personally for me, I do not need that all the time. If you can manage to give me something great in a new way, setting, or experience, I'll probably sing its praises. Underground is a great experience. I always found the situation surrounding Medal of Honor Underground to be an interesting one. So after the first game was a huge hit, despite many outside efforts to try and stop it from even being made, People loved it and it sold well, but being that DreamWorks Interactive had a lot of talent behind them, as evident by their execution with Medal of Honor 1, at the same time they failed to produce an actual hit before this. So as an effort to preserve the company and keep it going, they were then sold to EA before Medal of Honor came out. After the game was a hit, now EA was in a really cool situation. Imagine just buying a studio with all this talent, and essentially the first game that they do with you is a huge hit. EA sort of went nuts with the popularity and success of this young series. This is where we saw so many sequels get greenlit. Most of the original team went on to work on the very first entry for the next generation systems like the PS2. A new company was sought after to bring Medal of Honor to the PC with Allied Assault. Even a plane-based spin-off was being considered during this time as well. EA bought a company that struck gold with what seemed to be a very profitable IP, and they wanted to keep digging. And then came in a small group of the original team that wanted to break off from the development of Frontline and work on one last PS1 entry. This is where Underground came into play. I think when looking through this lens, it makes Underground even more impressive. Here you have a team the fraction of the size that made the original, setting out to make a sequel that captures the magic of the first, while also diving into a new setting, and one that we don't really see within games. Focusing on a French resistance fighter, fighting back an opposing force within their own country, makes the narrative of the game a bit more personal. Again, like I said before, I really love this series, and I at least enjoy most of the entries while also loving a bunch as well. I do think EA was being a bit too trigger happy on these sequels, because they fired off way too many sequels all too quickly. There is something to be said about making the player base wait a bit and miss the game before having a new entry come out. That being said, as a quick follow-up to the first, Underground stands proudly next to it, and carries much of the same positives from the first two. I think when looking back on Underground, it's one of the ones that often gets skipped over, and is one that is easily one of the more forgotten and overlooked entries. I think part of this is that the original Medal of Honor was released later in the PS1 cycle, and when Underground finally came out, many were looking to the next generation to see what it could provide. Maybe Underground could have benefited from being a game that was made on the PS2 rather than PS1. Personally, I love that we got another Medal of Honor game from this era. The older look, gameplay style, and even how it went about its action and design is so memorable. Plus, having it on the PS1 provides this gritty look to it. Whether intentional or not, it only improves the game's experience when going back to it. Underground is a rare instance where a game is of high quality, while also being one that equally deserves more attention. Something else worth bringing up is how PlayStation seems to be expanding their backwards compatibility catalog for the PS4 and 5. Oddly enough, none of the Medal of Honor games are available on there. EA, like any company, loves easy money, so why not put these Medal of Honor titles on there? Yeah, sure, just like any game from these eras, there is some dated aspects to the visuals, but the heart and meat of the game, with its gameplay, is still great. Something I always say is that the sound effects and even AI could put some modern shooters to shame too. We need Medal of Honor to come back. Honestly, we need a new game, and a new single-player game at that, but I would be happy with a few re-releases or remasters. Either way, if you haven't played Underground, you should. I highly recommend it, and it deserves a lot more attention. This is a criminally underrated shooter, and it's one of the PS1's best. Have you played Underground? If so, let me know in the comments down below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.